welcome everybody out there. Welcome to the Media with me, your host Brian West, here to give you the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it throughout the week. So you, as a person, as a citizen, as an American, as a world leader, or whatever, will not go without being informed. Like I said, this is the show where I go through the top 8. If you want to contribute in any way, you can go to METHOD, the number 8 INC.com. If you want to contribute in any way during the progress of the show or during as the show is going on, you can go there. You can read something, buy something, sponsor something, or just click on something. That's www.method the number 8 inc.com. You can also, if you're having a bad signal and you want to listen in, you can tune in online at www.600wsom.com. Like I said, this is the show where I go through the top 8 headlines developing news stories that made it throughout the week to keep you informed and up to speed on what is actually going on in the world. Now let me read the disclaimer. These top 8 stories are only documented for records and to highlight topics for those in the business of radio, talk media, and those who just want to stay informed. Now folks, like I said, let's get to the top 8 stories that made it into the media this week. Big stories, a lot going on in the world, a lot going on in news. It's always good to stay informed. A lot of heat, once again, on the president. A lot of jobs being circulated around. People are still trying to find, as they're saying that there is job growth. So let's get to story number 1. Story number 1 that made it into the media this week, folks. The real issue with capitalism and the global profit wars. This story circulated. It kind of eased its way in. There was a story that I guess General Motors is offering buyouts to 18,000 GM workers, and some say that there are reports that there's been pressure on Wall Street from GM, and is very. I guess the reason why this story is so important, so pivotal, is because it kind of gives people the idea of what's happening. Like I said, it's Veterans Day here, and it's and when people don't, there's a lot of things that's been going on in the news, but when you lose touch of what's happening on the ground, even if you are a veteran or if you are any type of if you're working somewhere, you have a 9 to 5 job, and you're working at these places, sometimes people don't understand there's always a profit war going on, and no matter how much time we devote to veterans and to just try to recognize them for the sacrifices that have gone, there's a reality that is going on in any country that people live and die for. And the reality is that you have to we all have to we have to come to we have to just basically accept the choices that we've made in life. And some of the stories that made it into the news this week, especially with the Marine who with so much gun violence that happened in California, it was kind of tough for me to get through, because I hate seeing veterans, especially misunderstood and having to result just try to make it's a tragic situation, but there's a lot of good, humble veterans out there who've seen life on the battlefield, and they come home and they try to do the right thing. And they just try to live a normal life. I'm one of them. So, but this story about the profit wars and capitalism is there's a lot of debates going on each side of the aisle right now. People are trying to find what's right for America and what's right for the citizens, and just trying to figure out what works. There was a story that surfaced about this GM though, that there was a worker. He said something about he was talking about life after plant closings, and then there was also some Toys R Us workers who lost their jobs. They were laid off and things like that when Toys R Us falls. But once you lose that, and this is what I think people have to get in their mind. Just like myself, I often have to remind myself what it's like to starve, or what it's like. I have to remind myself, because you can lose touch very, very fast with reality. And the fact is that there are still some things going on the ground, and there are still people who are not receiving treatment, not taking their medicines, and that's the reality of the situation. But when people lose their job in this big global market, there's a reality that sets in, and people get angry, folks. If you've been working at a place for so long, even if you're working for the federal government, for the military, if you've put in years of your life serving and putting in hours, when that job is gone, that's why the profit wars, which you see with all these trade deals, and the fact that there's when they're talking about China stealing or manipulating the currency or stealing intellectual property. See, what people don't understand is China's culture is different from their laws are different, so they may see things differently. But here in America, there are some things going on the ground, and there's things happening, and people want answers, and that's why this program is so special today, and it's because of the fact that there are real things happening on the ground. And if you're a leader or if you're in a public office position and you lose touch with what's happening on the ground, it can get very, very scary, and that's what you probably see happening. There was even some Wall Street stories that surfaced, and they're talking about how big investors, in the 1%, how they need to be spending money in the United States. And to make this serious, when you see the seriousness of the matter, especially when you talk about the trade deals, that's when you move jobs out of a community and you take them overseas, and that's what people are talking about. The people the 1%, they need to channel that money back into the U.S. markets because of the fact of what we're seeing. We're seeing people not working. There's even a story that was talking about taxing tech companies to fight homelessness. And this is what's happening when machines take people's job. There's that idle time when veterans aren't doing things, when they have that idle time to think, to go out and like, when if you read some of the stuff about this guy, or any story about anybody who commits these heinous crime, they have these thoughts, and they're there. And some people say that there's no stopping these people, but some people are talking about gun control laws. But there's, like I said, there's a reality that happens on the ground, and that reality is when you're sitting in a room by yourself, when you're not out in public, and you're putting on a face, and people are having a good time. But if people cannot if something happens in their life that's traumatic, and that's just something, there's another story that surfaced about that's traumatic, whether it's job loss, a bad marriage, a bad childhood, that stuff lingers in somebody's head. If you're fired, if any type of animosity that happens in your life, and that's what we probably can witness, even. And that's probably why they always say you have to remember the sacrifices, because some people don't ever feel appreciated for what they've done. And that's a big part of mankind, is that some men take their anger out in different ways. And even with these profit wars, and in this capitalist environment, if you don't have money in America, folks, the reality is you cannot keep up. You have to, it's a hard knock life. You have to walk to work. You have to count every dollar that's coming in. While everybody else is out wasting money, there's people watching, folks, and this is what's happening on the ground. And this is why, like I said, when you see these stories happen in the media and people are trying to scramble and figure out what to do, the fact is if that were you in situations where, or something happened in your life, and you don't trust anybody, you don't trust your counselors, even if you have a traumatic event and you don't know who to talk to, this is what we see happening in this great country that we live in. People are out they're enjoying their lives, folks, and there's some forgotten folks out there. They're always out there lingering, and you never see what's happening in their mindset until it reaches a mass market or a mass source of media. There's also some things going on in this story. Number one, when we talk about profit wars, there's still people who haven't even fully recovered from the mortgage crisis. And if you talk, I think Wells Fargo is trying. They made some headlines. They're trying to wrong some of the things that were done with their customers. They're trying to. I guess they're trying to pay back some of their customers, but there's people who are still suffering out there. And if you did not know, Wall Street saw some big gains after the midterm elections, and when you look at things like this, when people are making money and the middle class or the poor are not eating, folks, things happen, and when things happen, there's a ripple effect that happens, because if people don't feel like they're being fairly treated, they hold that anger in. U.S. consumers borrowed a solid $10.9 billion in September. Mortgage applications fall to a 4-year low. Folks, there's some unsettledness in the air. I don't know I don't know how much I can emphasize on the fact that there are still some unhappy people. There's even they're even talking about employees revolting. It's happening at Amazon, Facebook, and and Google. These are big time companies that have wealth, and they're talking about sexism, political controversies, and the fact of woes that come with such big growth. There was even a story that surfaced in the working, when you talk about profit wars and capitalism, there was even a story that surfaced about Under Armour reportedly being run like a frat house because their employees have been taking some of their pay and going to strip clubs. And like I said, and people who are not being treated fairly, who are sitting at the bottom, they're watching this. They're watching people with money, and it's not a pretty sight when it comes to reality. So this story crept its way into the top 8, but this story may gain some steam if people keep losing in this battle. And some people take losses very hard, folks, and not everybody can win in capitalism. And when it comes to global profit wars, when people are battling for that money, there's some winners and there's some losers. As you can see, there's some other stories I'm going to get to here in a second. If you want to contribute in any way, METHOD, the number 8, inc.com. That's method8inc.com, where you can buy something, watch something, click on something, or just read something. I'm in my office from 10 to 6, Monday through Friday at 5648 Market Street. If you want to swing by, if you have any services that you need, we specialize in many things: event planning, consulting, media, said all types of media, performing arts specialists. There's also some things going on in the community. It'll be a first annual Veterans Christmas Luncheon. It will be hosted by Delma Stubbs at the Veterans Commission in Youngstown. He will be honoring vets of Mahoning Valley at the Maronite Center at 1555 South Meridian Road in Youngstown, Ohio. That will be on December 7th. It will be held from 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. If you want to contact Delma Stubbs at 330-599-4212. And you can also email him at dstubbs@mahoningcountyohio.gov. He is he's an outreach coordinator at the Veterans Commission, and he will be holding a luncheon for veterans and stuff that's going on in the community. Me, myself, at Method 8, we will be having our 4th annual community movie premiere for the Independent Arts, where we film local talent. If you want to come meet me and some of the people at Method 8, some of the actors, you can come to the Holiday Inn next weekend on Sunday at 6 p.m. We'll be there from 6 to 8 p.m. showing a movie premiere, and there'll be some performances. We'll have a singer. She'll probably bring it in with some Christmas songs. Tony Zetz will be singing. That will be at the Holiday Inn in Boardman at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Now let's get to story number 2 as we're getting through these stories. Like I said, I always try to give you what's happening in the news so you can be informed and know what's going on. But when people there's always a difference when people don't understand what's happening on the job. But story number 2, the headline I made it in: Will President Trump make it with so many enemies? This story is interesting because of the fact that we have a sitting president who seems to be making not only enemies across the world, but enemies within his own country. There's a lot of people that support President Trump, and this story number 2 snuck its way in because of all the heat of the rhetoric that this president spews out. Me, myself, I always try to go with the better candidate for the country, and the timing and being faithful, and trying to practice the faith on a day-to-day basis, trying to live a good life and a clean life. Well, I try to find the good in everything, and I try to find reasoning behind everything. Even being hurt and being in the hospital for so long, I had to try to find reasoning. Being so young, and not knowing what my life was going to amount to, and I had to go to a room every night, and I had to talk to myself and talk to God. Or some people don't believe, but I believe that there's a force in this life. But the president, when we look at the legacy of what's going on and what's happening, there's two sides of the coin when we refer to this the presidency. And many on one side say that the president was elected because informed Americans were fed up with the way this country has been run. Some people believe he was elected because of his business skills, and some people just cannot seem to reason with the just the things that he say. We see things, and we don't know what it is that, what he's feeling inside, because he's a leader, and that's just the way it is when you're in the highest office in the world. You have to that's just something. But there's something happening when we wonder what's wrong and what's right in the president, and is it a conspiracy that there's something is being revealed in this country when we talk about what's going on in Washington. And when you see, we saw some things that happened in the media. I'm going to try to make this show as calm as possible today, but we saw some things happen in the media where the president was spewing out his views towards a reporter. And whenever you go into mediation, or mediation is just another form of moderation. It can be being a moderator. It's tough because you have to stay in the middle, and you have to try to understand what's actually happening in the picture. And being a failure, I was married and I failed at marriage, but I always hear people say there's two sides of the story. There's always two sides. So somebody has to be guilty, or something has to be going on in this mixture where we have a president saying things to the media, and people are trying to understand what it is that he's saying, and then the media people are taking their side and trying to figure out. So in each side of the fight, you start to see people fighting in a country with so many resources, and a country that has a lot of potential to continue to be great and do great things. So when you look at this president, and you look at the reason why he's gaining a lot of steam, and we look at even the House and how the Democrats were able to try to balance things out. But you listen to what the other side is saying, and they're talking about the treatments, and the fact that something is happening in America that needs to be noticed. And you hear rhetoric, like you hear talking about liberals, and you hear conservatives, and you hear people talking about things, and some people don't understand the reality of the situation. The reality is, yes, it's Veterans Day. People have lost their lives serving this country. But when you're hearing a fight, and you're listening to two people argue, you always try to figure out who is right and who is wrong. So when you look at this president, people are complaining about an unorthodox immigration policies, and how he's been they say that he's been attacking the weak. Some even can think of it, I think the term may be demagogue, or there's other terms that people may use, or they may call him a bully, or they may have different ways of viewing. But if we sit down and we take the time to mediate and balance things out, and listen to why is there so much going on, and why is there so much hatred in the air? And is it to blame the media, or is it the president? So is the media being unfair to this administration? And is it being unfair to not only just this administration, but conservatives? And this is what we need to sit down. Now, the president also put a cap on refugees in 2017. It used to be, I think it was like 80,000. Now it's 50,000. So you also look at things like they're calling him a racist or a white nationalist, and they're saying that he possibly has some collusions with Russia. Then there's some disagreement on media arguments and some of the things that he said, and they look at some of the speeches, and people are homing in on his behavior and trying to see something that could be fueling a madman in the White House. This is what's happening. And then you have the fact that telling allies or business partners and trading partners on global TV that they have to pay up. So putting business policy out into the mass public. Then you have the fact that there's been some publishing that neighbor cash-strapped countries are going to pay for an expensive border wall. And then the president threatens to gridlock Democrats if they pursue an investigation. So, folks, there's some real things happening, and and there are is creating some uncertainties, a lot of just something in the atmosphere when it comes to relations domestically and across the world. And you have one party. If you go into the inner city, they've run these communities, and you listen to what is like I said, if you take the time, just take a listen. Sometimes when I as growing up, I had to get better. I had to be hollered at. I had to be told the truth. And as a veteran, we face that a lot on the battlefield. The drill sergeants tell us the truth, and they have to do it, and it could be rated our ways. But if you look at the argument here, and we try to understand the tactics of Donald Trump, we have to figure out, is this deliberate? Is he doing this strategically to get the attention of just the average Americans? And if he is, it's a clever way, but is it working? And is it working for the betterment of all Americans and for the world? So I guess, to make a long story short, is playing the bad guy sometimes good for any relationship? Or there's an old saying that sometimes when somebody shouts at you and they say they're sorry, sometimes in reality they meant what they said. So we see this, and we see speeches that many feel are divisive and are appealing to an already angry segment of the U.S. population. And we see this. But the fact is, there are professionals, people who have spent their entire careers practicing their craft, and they may not be feeling like they're getting a fair shake. And this is why story number 2 may keep evolving, especially now that people are using the strategy of checks and balances. You also look at targeted investigations, people threatening investigations by the opposing party. You also look at hush payoffs to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, and then blaming Obama for the annexation of Crimea instead of Putin. So story number 2 may get bigger and bigger because of the fact that people are using checks and balances when it comes to the Trump administration. So the fact is Donald Trump achieving its purpose, and that's why story number 2 may evolve, and I think it may get bumped up if it stays in the news, especially if we keep seeing what we're seeing. We're at the halfway point, so I'm going to go to story number 3 real quick. If you want to contribute in any way, you're in the mediator with me, Brian West, METHOD, the number 8, INC.com. If you want to contribute any way, you can sponsor, buy something, click on something, or just watch a program. Let's get to story number 3. Now, story number 3 is also interesting, and it made it in because people cannot understand why some people choose violence, even veterans. And this story surfaced after a California man reportedly instructed a teen to toss an IED at a police officer during a march. It was held in July. There was also another California man who was a veteran, a former Marine, who killed 12 people. This story just surfaced at a country music bar, and the shooter was, like I said, was a former Marine. Now, if you talk to the friends of this former Marine, Ian David Long, they say that they had no clue on what triggered him to do this. Now, if you go into the conspiracy world, they talk about many interesting things. They talk about switches that are in people's brains. You will hear all different sides of a coin, and all different reasoning on why people do what they do. Some people say it could be mental health. Some people say that people are just evil, and some people say they're just crazy. But the truth is that there's a pain in every person. And that pain can sit there idly, and then it can just explode into reality, causing and it can cause a mass problem because nobody knew this pain was there, and it can be hidden, shielded for long periods of time. And now the reason why this story is interesting is because, and why it made it into the top 8, is because they're saying that the shooter visited the shooting site quite a few times, and he owned a legal gun. And some say that PTSD could be a factor. And to be able to understand PTSD, this other veterans are saying this doesn't sound like a case. There was also some other stories that surfaced. Like I said, it is Veterans Day. When we talk about certain things, the stories that made it into the news, where a former Navy SEAL just basically was, I guess the story just kind of eased its way in, where SNL made some jokes, and then they settled it on TV, and they made some jokes about the former Navy SEAL's eye. They joked it off, and they made a negative into a positive thing. And basically, what the Navy SEAL is saying that in politics there has to be civility, and he even took some aim at the president. And it's a part of manhood when you see things like this. But what we try to get to is why, because these killings cause a lot of problems. There was just a killing in Youngstown where a guy killed 3 people, even a child. Nobody. Some people are saying it's over drugs, but folks, and every time something like this happens, they look at guns and access to guns and access, and there's a reality setting in. But in mediation, in the mediator with me, I try to go in between and see what's happening in reality, what's happening on the ground, and why would somebody go do this, or why would somebody do or take other people's lives who really don't know what is even going on. Sometimes some people are just going out to have a good time. There was also another story that surfaced on why people would use violence to get any point across. 2 daycare workers are charged with crimes after a video surfaced of a child fight club that they started right in the daycare. The reports say that they directed at least 6 children to have fist fights within the daycare. Like I said, when I go through these stories and you read these stories, it's amazing what happens in reality on the ground when people take their eyes off of this big image of peace and happiness in a utopian environment. Folks, there's some sad stories out there, but there's some good stories. There's always some good stories that you try to see through. But story number 3, when it talks about why some choose violence, even veterans, why do people choose violence? It's a very interesting thing. Why do some people choose to walk away, say, you know what, I'm going to be the better person? And why do some people take drastic measures to get their point across? Why, even when you talk about the trade centers, you talk about the Oklahoma City bombings, the Vegas shootings, why do people do this? It's an interesting part of life. Why do children decide to pick up a weapon, or why do bullies do what they do? And this is an interesting part of society that people seem to question. In the justice system, they're always trying to figure out, why do people do what they do? And it's an interesting part. But that's, if story number 3 gains any steam, you'll probably see some things happening, and the reasoning on what is actually happening in the minds of in just the minds of children as they grow into adults. Some people say traumatic events happen and they stay there. So if you want to contribute in any way, you're in the mediator with me, Brian West, where I give you the top 8 headlines developing news stories that make it throughout the week and throughout the months, so you can be informed and understand what's happening in the media. We're headed into story number 4. We're at the halfway point, so I'm going to keep going here. Story number 4 is why won't the Middle East leave the news? Some people are wondering. I say this is a show where I sit back and I try to determine, the Middle East has been in headlines for a long time, and their headlines don't seem to be going away anytime soon. And some people say it's because of oil, because of the fact that there's wealth in the land. Some people say that's the only reason why we're there. Some people say we're in the Middle East because of historical value, because that's where the Bible originates, where where the pyramids are. But the fact is that there are people being killed in the Middle East. And there's some people that say the Middle East is peaceful. You go over there, it's fine. The media just hypes up everything. They make this stuff all up. But a report about an entire family that was wiped out, families were wiped out by U.S. airstrikes in Syria. This report surfaced, and they're saying that civilians are being killed as well. And there's also some. They're saying that 200 mass graves were found in Iraq from ISIS. So what we have to ask ourselves is, what is really at stake in the Middle East? And in reality, is it, if you want to put it bluntly, if you want to tell the truth, are we over there because of oil, or is it because of business deals? Because for some odd reason, there is so much strife and anger going on in these countries. Like there's Yemen. The story of Yemen is, they're saying that it is such a death war zone over there that this story cannot possibly leave the United States' attention because of the fact that they're saying that we have some responsibilities for this crisis that's going on in Yemen. And even as they're saying that even when another regime falls, that there's warlords that do not want to see a new regime. So the boys in the Middle East are playing a game of power that just won't end when it comes on what's going on the ground in these countries. And this story is staying. I thought it would ease up, but when it comes to the Middle East, they have a way of getting everybody's attention because of the fact that there's so much death on the ground in some of these countries. Now, when you talk about these countries, you have to keep Iran and places like Al-Qaeda and groups like Al-Qaeda, you have to keep them in mind, because they're saying that they're infiltrating Yemen, and that may be America's biggest concern, is keeping Iran on this position of gaining so much strength. And if you did not know, folks, there have been, in this story alone, when it comes to the Middle East, 6,660 civilians have been killed, 10,560 injured in the war in Yemen. 22 million people are in need of humanitarian aid. The Yemen crisis also has led to a cholera outbreak that has affected 1.1 million people. There's been little bitty signs of peace where Arabians have met with Israel, but there was even a Utah mayor killed in Afghanistan. Some people are saying that we just need to get out of there, but the fact is we are stuck into this. There is no stable. People invest in governments, they overthrow them. There's even some talk about Louis Farrakhan. I respect any minister behind the pulpit, but they're saying that Louis Farrakhan has been pro-Iranian, pro-militant, and he's responding. He's basically been responding about what's been happening in these countries, and they're saying that he's led some death to America chants in Iran. So the question is Louis Farrakhan throwing fuel on the fire? As much as I love brothers, I love my white brothers, my Muslim brothers, folks, when it comes to diplomacy and peace, folks, there's children and there's people on the ground, and you get these guys who get in there, whether they're anti-Semites, anti-Christian, anti-Muslim, folks, the reality is that there are some innocent folks who just want a nice meal and a place to stay, and the big boys are just won't seem to stop trying to strategize, and nobody even understands what the global agenda is. War can be useful in many situations, but when you look at the Middle East, you see things happening, and you look at these weaker countries and people, especially humanitarian aid workers. We have to ask ourselves: is there a reason, or is there something happening that we just don't know about? Why won't people just chill out, take a break and realize that they can do more good by building and trying to govern people properly rather than blowing and destroying everything that man spent his hard-earned time building. It amazes me how you talk about people like Alexander the Great, but you rule out the fact that they burned books that could have been very valuable to not only just the history but the foundation of every place that we live in right now. That you would have saved archaeologists and tons of people a lot of time by wondering how the pyramids were built if maybe people would have not burned books. So folks, there's some things happening in mediation. There's some things happening in the world. In the meantime, there were 17 children affected in New York because of a measles outbreak that happened in Israel. So as you can see, what's happening way over across the world is trickling its way into the American environment. Federal appeals court rules against Trump, the Trump administration on DACA. Let's get to the last. We're trying to breeze. I'm trying to breeze through as many stories as I can. We have top 8. We're on story number 5. So let me keep going. We're probably about 60% through mediation, but let me keep going. That was story number 4. Is why won't the Middle East leave the headlines? And you see why, folks. It is a war-torn country. And I don't see that battle letting up anytime soon. If you want to contribute in any way, you can go to METHOD, the number 8, INC.com, methodeating.com, where you can buy something, watch something, click on something, or just read something. Or you can sponsor a program. You're in the media with me, Brian West. Let's get to story number 5. Sleeping on the education issue. If you do not know, we just passed the midterms, but the education issue will not go away. A lot of schools are still unable to reach the graduation rates that are required, the test scores required by the states, and millennials are just not happy with the policies that their ancestors have put in place. They're saying there's too much debt, the grandparents and parents. And if you did not know, story number 5 also made it in because of it bumped up all the way to number 5 because this is a real problem. A lot of teachers are getting involved with elections. They did get involved with the midterms, and they're even taking as far enough to try to get in office. They manned the phones and were knocking on doors because there is a reality going on in the classroom that some students just do not have discipline. There was some stories that surfaced about teachers getting in fights with students. This is a reality, and let's not forget about the demonstrations in 5 states this year put on by teachers. They want better pay and better working conditions. And folks, like I said, when you look at story number 5, if it gains any more steam, you may be looking at the next generation not being taught properly, not even just being taught properly, but they may be blaming it. The teachers may be not blaming it on their ability to teach, but they may be blaming it on the fact that American children and just students in general have forgot the main principles about coming into school, and that's to learn. Like I said, if you want to contribute anyway, METHOD, the number 8, INC.com, methodeating.com. You're in the media with me, Brian West. You can buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something on the website. If you want to tune in or streaming, we post a show online on Mondays. You can go to the website and watch the show if you missed the top half. Or if you want to tune in online, if you don't have a good signal, you can go to www.600wsom.com and you can listen in live on the radio. Story number 6. Let's get through it. It's the untold stories about oils, diamonds, gold, and pipelines. Folks, a judge just blocked the Keystone XL pipeline construction again. I guess the Trump administration tried to pull through. The reason why the story surfaced is because there was a book by Jane Mayer. The book, it's called Dark Money, and she was citing the victims of big oil and pipeline construction. I recommend you read that book if you want to get the views on what's happening on the ground when it comes to big time oil, big time diamonds, big time golds, and when countries find big time resources in their neighborhood, and all of a sudden they start seeing tons of people and trying to dig or go underground, or what you call fracking. But some say the oil industry has gotten cleaner, and they say if you want to get into it now, it's the best time. When you talk about fossil fuels, there are some pros and cons that comes along, and some people say that the cons outweigh the pros. But when you have energy that can fuel the country, that's why these are precious things that people need, precious assets, commodities, all types of things that people can grow wealth. They can fuel the town. They can fuel cars. And you look at what all these things can do when you talk about oil, gold, diamonds, and pipelines, and that's what the big fight is over. And some people state environmental concerns. That's why story number 6. If you see stories like story number 6, I think the principle and why the story made it all the way up to in the top 3 is because of the fact that in story number 6 you get, when you hear about these things, they sound amazing. Oh, I would love to do that. But what happens on the ground, in Jane Mayer's book, she talks about how somebody actually lost their life in one of these oil pipeline ordeals. I think it was I don't know, it wasn't the Koch brothers, but it was somebody, a group. Forgive me for not having the reference in front of me, but she talks about in the book. I just recommend you go get the book Dark Money, and it talks about some of the shady deals that go on the ground when it comes to people making transactions for maybe profits or the betterments. Nobody really can get into the mind of people who have these agendas or who are in this business. But I mean, there's even stuff in the book where it talks about people's property, people just being forced out of their houses and forced off their land that they bought, paying taxes on. And there was even a story that surfaced about sanctions on Iran that exempted 8 oil importers, including China and Japan. Pompeo says that the sanctions are they're because of they're trying to deprive the regime of revenues that they're trying to use to spread death and destruction across the world. So, folks, this is the reality going on in mediation today. Like I said, I try to make it as calm and smooth as possible so I don't get people all revved up. But there are some things happening on the ground, and there's a reality that sets in. We try to live our day-to-day lives not concerned about and try to go out, but there's some serious things happening in life, and that's why the midterm elections probably was important. There were some things on the balance when it comes to clean water and people tapping into other people's resources. But when it comes to big money and when people need jobs and need oil and people die, innocent people, and that's the reality, folks. And you wonder about your children, you wonder about enlisted veterans. A lot of veterans don't want to believe that they're on the battlefield for just the wealth, but they want to believe that they're on the battlefield for the greaterment and the betterment of the world and the people. You listen to some of the stories on why people say they joined, and it's join any type of military, and they say they do it to defend their people, to defend their land. But folks, there is a reality that there's some shady stuff going on in the world, on the ground. When you talk about some of these diamond fields, there's stories that don't get reported that happen in Africa. They talk about how some people have basically robbed Africa of their land and built empires and colonized the country. So you see these stories happening, but you may hear about them on late night radio, late night talk shows. But in reality, this may be what's happening on the ground and why we see so much strife. Let's get to the top 2 stories that made it into the media this week. Story number 7. Let's get through this so I can go out and take a break, enjoy my Veterans Day in the comfort of my home. I'll probably read a book, or I'll find something to do. Probably go. I know I left some things at the gym. I may have to go pick them up. Story number 7. Mental health and the reality and why some people see things differently. That's what this whole story has been based off of, so people can see what's happening on the ground, so you can try to get a visual of why things may be happening. Now, if you want to be a thinking person and think spiritually, like when you talk about, if you want to go into the field of the religion and you talk about spirits, demons or evil and how things happening, karma, what you throw out comes back to you. A lot of people may be trying to believe that that's what's happening when we see some of these stories that pop up in the media. Some people don't believe in stuff like that. Some people just believe in common sense. But folks, there are some mental health people that are saying that they found a part of the brain that triggers sadness. And they believe that people do things because of childhood trauma. When children are going through things as a child and they see things that are something that's very traumatic, and it affects their health as they age. This made it in the Journal of American Medicine, and this actually may be a big topic as we get closer in closer into the minds of criminals, even in criminology, as we get deeper and deeper. Pardon me, but if we get deeper and deeper, and some say that this is the reason why people have so many mental illness problems, and they become even addicted to certain supplements in adulthood because of the traumatic experiences that they go through as children. Some people don't believe in this stuff. Some people just believe this. Some people are just that way because they are. But this is what we're faced with once again. And we look at what's happening on a global scale. And there's some things happening on the ground. And there are some people who are going through some traumatic experience and they don't know how to handle it. So, but there's some research. They're doing research on a day-to-day basis. Now the question remains is, could all of these killings have been prevented just by monitoring human behavior or having a certain section of people in mental institutions? Some people, this is a story that bumped all the way up to number 7 because of the fact that some people are wondering, how do can this be prevented? And is mental health to blame? If you lock somebody up and give them medicines and do all types of probing, and they can't go out and see the normal world, and some people are blaming this on somebody's state of mental health. Some realists are just saying that it's going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. Some people are just evil by nature. This has been a dilemma, a problem for years, an issue for years. People have always wondered about this. If you look at a criminology book, it is a thick book of justice, people in the justice system trying to figure out why people commit crimes that they do, or why they do what they do. And it gets thicker and thicker every day. There's also been a decline when you talk about what's been happening in the psyche of the whole matter. There's been a decline in fertility rates. Do you know that in 1950, women were having an average of 4.7 children? Now a report saying that the average has dropped all the way down to 2.4. So we've seen a change in just not only just the culture, but they say that the decline is because of more access to contraceptives and the fact that there are more women educated and on the workroom floor. But folk, there's a reality going on in mental health, and some people cannot understand why people are doing what they are doing, and they're trying to find answers. There's been some killings that are people, and they're happening quite a bit. And I'm telling you right now, people want answers. If you're not in these communities, I just saw it myself in Youngstown. A gang of kids just shot up children, shot up a child, and it's happening all the time. And people are saying enough is enough. Something has to be done. So in the Mediator, I decided to bring that into the forefront of why that story popped up to number 7, and the reason why story number 8 has to do with why do people kill people with guns. So those are the top 2 stories that made it into the Mediator this week, and the top 2 stories, the developing stories and headlines. The story number 8 is, why do people kill people with guns? This is the question, and these stories were not even they were gaining steam, but it's happening a lot, and people are becoming desensitized to it, and some people are saying there's something that has to be done. Whether it's if you keep sweeping this under the rug, the fact is what we have to look at is whenever you look at data, you have to look at trends. And when you talk about terrorism, did this trend start with terrorism? Why are these mass shootings? Is this some type of a evil way? Is this something that people are using to protest? Now, when you see patterns of behavior like this, do we see a pattern when we look at what happened when you had all this terrorism to what's happening now? Is there a pattern? Was there a sharp decline in data during the 80s until the 90s? Is it because of music? Is it because of entertainment? Something, pardon me, has to be causing this. Something seriously is causing, pardon me, but it's hard work in mediation. But somebody's got to do it. And being the mediator, I have to try to figure out what is happening, and I have to stay between. And sometimes you have to, your throat gets a little chattery, but we have to get to the bottom of this, folks. What is causing all of this chaos? And is it because of copycats? But when you see stories like this in the media or in the news, they have to be addressed. Now, there's even this the story. The thing that even bumped these stories up even further is the fact that a woman, Lucy McBath, she won a Georgia seat because her son was shot in 2012. It motivated this woman to get into politics. He got in a dispute over loud music and was shot. So this is serious. I don't know why these when one minute we're talking about peace and happiness, and then all of a sudden we see all this violence, people getting in fights. You see people on Facebook fighting, little babies being. I mean, this is something at the bottom of the pit that's surfacing into a global problem, and it's a United States problem. Because if you were not there and you don't know what it felt like, you don't understand, and you think it's okay, it's not okay, folks. This is reality. It makes a Veterans Day spoiled when you see your brother or somebody you could have been serving next to go out and kill a mass group of people, and everybody's just calm about it. Oh, we'll find a way, or we'll pray for it, folks. This is reality. Something is going on in these people's minds that needs to be addressed. Because if you were not there, you will forget. Just like the wars in the war zones. If you were not there, you will forget about the sacrifices made to get you to where you are today. This is what's going on. But there is some good in the matter. We will end on a good topic. A gun owner did save a mother of 3 during a violent attack after hearing some screams. Folks, if you want to contribute anyway, those are top 8 stories that made it to the media this week. It's been a tough week for me. I wanted to, I'll probably maintain a positive attitude as usual, but Veterans Day is a special time of reflection to everybody who served, just like Memorial Day, because I had the privilege and the opportunity to volunteer in a country that is built off of sacrifice, and just not even just veterans, but civil rights leaders, people who have fought and died for the freedoms that I get to enjoy today. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Some local stories that made it in. The library is now helping community members from being scammed. 18 Youngstown City School District employees are maybe losing their jobs. Ohio and local communities, like I said, they're voicing their concerns about gun violence. There's just a lot going on through people's minds. They don't understand why if it's drugs, if it's money, why somebody would ambush and kill a young child who won't even, why these things happen, nobody knows. There's also some other stories that surface. St. Elizabeth seems to be getting a rise in emergency room visits because Northside is closed. Home Depot, let's end on a good note. Home Depot Foundation will remodel the home of a Youngstown veteran. Folks, I want to thank you so much for tuning into the media. Like I said, if you want to contribute in any way, you can go to method8inc.com, method8inc.com, where you can buy something, watch something, click on something, or just read something, or you can just sponsor a program. I don't want to forget Delmas. Delmas will be having a Christmas party for veterans in the community. They'll be having it at the Maronite Center on December 7th, 1555 South Meridian Road in Youngstown, Ohio. If you need more information, you can contact Delmas at 330-599-4212. He will be having an event for appreciating veterans in the community. Delmas has been working very hard to be the outreach coordinator. If you want to come meet us, we will be having a movie premiere this weekend at Sunday next week on the 18th at the Holiday Inn in Boardman. You can come out, meet me, the cast, the crew, some local actors. You can fellowship, listen to some Christmas music, and also get the movie. It's only $5. If you need more information, you can come to 5648 Market Street. I'm there from 10 to 6 Monday through Friday. You're in the mediator with me, Brian West, and like I said, I'm signing off. Enjoying my Veterans Day, and I'm telling you to enjoy yours. Go out, show some love, try to appreciate the freedoms and the joys, especially if you were not there at the scenes of some of these crimes, if you were not on the battlefield. Try to reflect and just try to just humble yourself and try your best to live a genuine in life. And never forget, folks, never forget it. It's been a rough week for me. I did not want to see that. I did not want to see a Marine having to go to the dark side. But folks, there's just some things going on in society that we all battle with, and if we don't talk about it, it comes to light. I want to thank you so much for tuning to the media with me, Brian West. I wish you the best of luck during your week, and I wish you the best of love. Show some love, everybody. Have a good week. Thank you for tuning to the media with me, Brian West. And don't forget to come check us out next week at the Movie Prayer. Have a good week, everybody.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The mediator is here.